Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Unfiltered and Unapologetic, the space where we talk about healing, money, faith, and self trust without shame, without pressure, and without leaving our culture out of the conversation. I'm your host, Caitlin Gil-Soto, born and raised in Lawrence, Massachusetts, always traveling between Bani and El Cibao, proudly Dominican, a master's in finance candidate, learning finance not just for spreadsheets, but for our people, for our communities. As we move into the new year, many of us feel the urge to reset our finances, to do better, to finally get it right. But manifestation doesn't begin with vision boards or discipline. It begins with the nervous system. If the body is bracing, it's hard to receive, no matter how good the intention is. This episode is about generational wealth, not just in dollars, but in belief, language, faith, and trust. Throughout this episode, you'll hear reflection, questions, and affirmations. Per usual, they're not assignments, they are invitations. You don't have to answer everything right now. Just notice what lands, what feels familiar, and what's ready to soften. When we hear the phrase generational wealth, most people immediately think of money being passed down, assets, property, savings, opportunity. But for Dominican households and for many immigrant households in general, wealth was never just financial. Money carried emotion long before it carried numbers. It showed up as tension in the home, as adults whispering instead of explaining, as children sensing stress without having the language for it. Money was often present as absence. What couldn't be done, what had to wait, what required sacrifice, and even when our families did the best they could, the atmosphere around money taught the nervous system something important. Money equals alertness. Money equals responsibility. Money equals pressure. So even if no one ever sat you down and said, "This is how money works," the body was learning anyway. It learned to brace. It learned to worry ahead of time. It learned that money could disappear. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that words don't just describe reality, they prepare us for it. So when money was spoken about with fear, scarcity, or resignation, the nervous system learned to expect instability. That expectation matters because the body doesn't wait for proof. It prepares based on memory. This is why generational wealth is also about emotional inheritance. What gets passed down isn't only habits, it's a relationship to safety. I have the first question here for you guys. When did I think about money in my childhood home? What emotion comes up first? Did money feel calm, tense, unpredictable, or heavy? And the affirmation for this question is, I can honor what my family survived without carrying their fear forward. One of the most common things people say is, I'm just bad with money. But that's not a personality trait. That's a story. And most stories have origins. When money felt inconsistent or stressful growing up, the body adapted in ways it knew how. Some people learned to cope by avoiding money, not checking accounts, not opening bills, not wanting to look. Others learned to cope by controlling money, tracking every dollar, feeling anxious about spending, tying safety to numbers. Neither of these responses means you're irresponsible. They mean you learned how to survive uncertainty. The problem isn't the strategy. It's when the strategy becomes identity. When you start believing, I can't be trusted with money, or I always mess this up, or I'll never get ahead. Florence Scovel Shinn spoke often about the power of expectation. What we consistently expect, we prepare for. And shame prepares the body for more fear, not clarity. When we're ashamed, we don't learn better. We freeze, avoid, or overcompensate. Healing begins when we stop confusing survival patterns with character flaws. I have another journal prompt here for you guys. What money labels have I placed on myself? Where do I think those beliefs come from? And the affirmation for this question is, I am not broken with money. I am learning a new relationship with it. Florence Scovel Shinn famously said, your word is your wand. That doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It means recognizing that language shapes expectation. When we constantly say, I'll never get ahead, or I'm always struggling, or money is hard, the body prepares for struggle before anything happens. This isn't about lying to yourself. It's about noticing what you are reinforcing. From a faith perspective, words are agreements. They tell the nervous system what to anticipate. And anticipation shapes how we move, decide, and respond. When your language softens, your body gets information that it doesn't have to brace as hard. Instead of, I'm terrible with money, you might begin with, I'm learning how to be steadier with money. That's not fluff. That's regulation. Florence's teachings weren't about fantasy. They were about alignment between belief, language, and action. I have a journal prompt here for you guys. What phrases do I repeat when I feel financial stress? How do those words feel in my body? The affirmation for this question is, I can choose words that support safety, clarity, and trust. For a lot of people, budgeting brings up resistance immediately. Not because budgeting is hard, but because of what it has represented in the past. For some reason, budgeting meant restriction, being told no, feeling watched, feeling guilty for wanting. For others, it meant fear, proof that there wasn't enough, confirmation that things were tight, or evidence that you were already behind. So when people say they hate budgeting, what they often mean is, budgeting makes my body feel unsafe. But budgeting at its core is not control. It's information. And information helps the nervous system orient. When you don't know what's coming in or going out, the body stays on high alert, waiting for something to go wrong. A gentle budget doesn't punish you. It tells you where you are. Florence Scovel Shinn spoke about order not as rigidity, but as preparation for receiving. Order doesn't cancel faith. Order creates space. You can trust God and still want clarity. You can believe in provision and still want awareness. Those things don't compete. They support each other. When budgeting is approached as self-trust instead of discipline, it stops feeling like judgment and starts feeling like steadiness. I have another journal prompt here for you guys. What memories or emotions come up when I think about budgeting? Do I associate structure with safety or with punishment? And the affirmation for this question is, clarity is an act of self-trust, not self-punishment. In a lot of households, faith and responsibility were taught as opposites. Either you trust God or you plan. Either you believe or you control. But healing usually lives in the middle. Faith without follow through can turn into avoidance. Responsibility without faith can turn into anxiety and control. Neither extreme feels safe long term. Florence Scovel Shinn emphasized alignment, integrity between what you believe and how you move. Not perfection, participation. When we take small grounded steps with money, we build trust with ourselves. And that self-trust matters. Because when you don't trust yourself, every decision feels high stakes. Every mistake feels dangerous. But when self-trust grows, mistakes become information, not proof of failure. Faith doesn't require you to abandon responsibility. It invites you to act without panic. I have a journal prompt here for you guys. Where do I avoid responsibility because it feels overwhelming? Where do I over-control because I'm afraid to trust? And the affirmation for this question is, I am allowed to move forward with steadiness and care. Healing money doesn't mean rejecting how you survived. This part matters because a lot of people think healing means saying everything before this was wrong, but that's not true. Survival strategies exist because they worked, at least for a time. If your family learned to be hypervigilant with money, that probably kept the lights on. If they avoided talking about money, that may have reduced conflict. If they held on tightly, that may be because they may have created stability in unstable conditions. Those strategies were not failures. They were responses. The problem is not survival. The problem is staying in survival when conditions have changed. Healing asks a different question. What do I still need and what no longer belongs to me? You don't need to shame the past to choose something calmer now. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that growth is about releasing outdated agreements, not fighting them, not punishing yourself for having them, just recognizing when something has finished its job. You're not betraying your family by wanting peace. You're not becoming careless by wanting ease. You're not ungrateful for wanting steadiness. You are evolving. I have another question for you guys. What money behaviors once helped me survive but now feel exhausting? What would it feel like to thank them and gently loosen them? And the affirmation for this question is, I can honor survival and still choose peace. Money healing is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming less braced. When fear is driving the system, everything feels urgent. Every decision feels final. Every mistake feels dangerous. But when safety increases, clarity returns. This is why self-trust is at the center of generational wealth. Not just trust in numbers, not just trust in systems, trust in yourself. Your ability to notice, to pause, to course correct without collapsing into shame. This is not about getting everything right this year. It's about practicing a new posture toward money, one that includes faith, awareness, and steadiness. Small steps count here. Gentle consistency counts. You don't need to rush your healing. You don't need to prove anything. You're allowed to build slowly. I have the last journal prompt here for you guys. What would it look like to move through this year with less fear around money? Where can I choose softness instead of urgency? And the affirmation for this question is, provision does not require panic. Now we're going to get into our prayer. Let's take a deep breath and put your hands on your chest. Dear God, thank you for the ways you have provided even when we didn't understand how. Thank you for the strength our families carried through seasons where survival was a priority and peace felt out of reach. As we move forward, help us release the fear that no longer serves us. Help us loosen the grip of panic. Help us replace pressure with clarity and control with trust. Teach us that abundance does not require exhaustion, that order can exist alongside faith, and that we are allowed to receive without guilt or fear. Bless the work of our hands, the choices we are learning to make, and the healing we are choosing now, not just for ourselves, but for those who come after us. Amen. If this episode resonated with you, take your time with it. You don't need to apply everything all at once. Awareness is already movement. You can journal using my blank journals sold on Amazon. The link is in the show notes. And if you'd like to support the show, you can do so through the Buzzsprout link in the show notes as well. It keeps these conversations going and allows me to keep creating this space. And don't forget, follow me at Unfill and Unapologetic Pod on TikTok and on Instagram. As always, you're not behind. You're rebuilding with intention. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.